eager Japanese maple students today? Everybody's got the sheet? Okay. Some light reading before bedtime, right? So thanks for coming. I'm Trevor Cameron, our general manager here. Maples are one of my favorite things, so this is always one of my favorite classes. We do record this. Nobody's on the video, so don't worry about it. I'll just wave. But we do record this. You can go back and watch it if you're not tired of me in an hour. It'll be up on YouTube here probably tomorrow. So we do record them all for later reference. So Japanese maples, the tree for all seasons. We'll go through some growing stuff. We'll teach you hopefully how to grow them in some pots perhaps. Talk a little pruning. We'll show some of my favorites. We do a lot of maples here at Sunnyside. If you ever go to our website, I think our list is still about 150 strong as far as varieties across the board. We do a lot of different lace leaves, dwarfs, big, small, every color in the rainbow you can see. I always enjoy doing this class in the spring because I think a lot of people think maple fall color, which is absolutely true. They all get great fall color of some kind, but I think sometimes folks are surprised that are just getting into maples how beautiful they are in the springtime. So I tried to bring a little sampling of some that we have in here that are leafed out. And you can see everything from lime green to purple to pink to red to every shade in between. So certainly some very pretty spring growth. Now this is a term I made up years ago, but I always start the class off with that. You know, Acer palmatum itis. If we talk Latin, that's our Latin name for Japanese maple. So this is the somewhat contagious mental condition of the gardener who shows extreme addiction to Japanese maples of all kinds. Symptoms include having multiple specimens in the landscape, followed by countless pots sited around the garden and home with maples in them. Exclamation from the patient always includes the phrase, "but I always have room for one more." So that's me, for one. I know a few of my customers I know in here are the same way. But I've been to some friends' yards that I've helped over the years. I think my friend Mr. Easley in North Everett might have the record at probably 110 plants in his ground and pots, which is crazy. That's even more than I got. So I have to pick and choose a little more wisely, but there's always room for one more. That's the truth. You know, just some general stuff, you know, about Japanese maples. You know, you can see from the few I brought up here, and we got hundreds of plants out there ready to go. A lot of color, a lot of different form, a lot of size, you know, from small, bushy, to weeping, to big, everything in between. There's a lot of choice when it comes to Japanese maple. One big thing I'm hoping you'll think about in your yard is really pay attention to the sun. You know, all maples make a great understory tree. It doesn't matter what kind it is, variegated, red, you won't get as much red if it's in shade, but they'll all grow great as an understory tree in partial shade. But maybe when we get to the two extremes, we have to be a little more careful. If I have deep dark shade, what can I grow there? And if I have all day hot afternoon sun, what are some ones I can grow out there as well? The one big thing up here as we come out of a nice wet winter once again is drainage. That's the one kiss of death for all maples, especially Japanese maples. I fought it in my own yard in Everett where I live. A lot of customers bring in samples here in the next month, like what happened to my tree, it's just dead overnight. Poor drainage is the absolute kiss of death. We cannot have heavy clay. We can't have the water table coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that in the show. Like I said, note spring colors as well as fall. You know, every one of these guys gets a great fall color. You could pick orange, red, yellow, whatever shade you like, you know, in a specific variety, but spring as well. Think of that kind of as, again, the tree for all seasons. What's going to look really cool in the spring as well. You know, one thing I always tell people, if you're worried a little bit about, can't see her over there, with if you can't, you know, if you're worried about the drainage a little bit, consider mounding a little bit. You know, there's nothing wrong. We're not talking about getting an anthill and planting a tree on it, but if I can just make a gentle little berm, I think, hey, it highlights the tree. A lot of these have beautiful structure in the garden, but you're also going to be that much far up out of the drainage and the water table, maybe to help you a little bit, okay? So if we talk planting, you know, hopefully everybody buys a maple or two to take home today at the class. You'll find one you like. But if we take them home to plant, you know, again, we would always want to dig a hole about twice as wide, twice as deep in our yard. I'm all about compost, so whether you have native dirt that's on the sandy side or the heavier clay side, again, be careful what happens down below. But we would mix compost with that, maybe 2/3 native soil, 1/3 compost. That'll help improve the drainage if we do have a little concern, and it will also build a little structure in sandy soils. You know, maybe the question is, I don't want to watch my maple die like mine did in Everett. You know, how do I ensure that I do have good drainage? You know, it's tough because all the soil's wet right now. It's not that it can't rain. It's not that it can't rain every day. It just has to go through the structure. So maybe you dig your hole, tap the bottom. If I'm feeling kind of hard pan, everyone knows what that is. I get my hose, maybe I put a bunch of water in there, walk away for an hour. What happens? Does the water dissipate, or I come back and I still have a pool sitting there? Okay, we got to do some extra digging to make sure, or pick a different spot. Okay. For container grown, you know, we can grow a lot of the really cool dwarfs, and really anything can grow in a pot for some period of time. But we do have an extensive selection of some smaller ones. You would just want to gently take it out of the pot. You know, I'll use Mr. Mini Maple here. Sorry, buddy, we'll get you back in. And I would just look at that perimeter and say, okay, it's not super root bound. Even if it was, it's not the end of the world. I just want to lightly score. I don't want to rip it apart. I don't want to tear into it. But if I take my hori knife or a little pruner tip, something, I can just lightly score the outside of that and let him know, okay, you don't have to sit and grow in your little circle anymore. You've got some fresh soil to grow out of the ground or onto a container as well. A big one with me is that fourth one there, balled and burlap. Does everyone kind of know what when I say that? Sometimes as a consumer at a nursery, you're going to get better value maybe for balled and burlap, maybe a little bigger plant because it's a little cheaper for me to buy. Somebody digs it up in the winter, wraps it in burlap, and you have a root ball to take home. Sometimes a little less money for maybe a little bigger plant on occasion with most trees. The biggest issue with that is don't take the burlap off. If we take the burlap off, pick it up, set it in our hole, you crack that root ball, your tree's gone. You're going to call me in 3-4 months and say, yeah, this tree didn't make it. So we got to make sure we're very gentle with them. We set them in the hole at the right level, we backfill, we get it planted. The last thing we do is cut that twine off the trunk and then peel the burlap to the sides, or I usually just take my scissors or knife and just cut the excess off. We can pull the twine out very easy. We leave the bottom and the sides on, and it rots away very quickly. Okay, so just be a little careful. Sometimes we're a little rough with our plants, so we just want to be a little gentle. Always use a good organic starter fertilizer to keep things happy. You know, most plants enjoy mycorrhizae, a beneficial fungus. If we put it in our soil, our root system, it grows exponentially. I always kind of half jokingly, but I'm half serious. Everybody's seen Avatar? You know, not the new one, but the old one. So if you think of that, that's essentially what mycorrhizae is. You know, scientists have figured out on Earth as well. All this stuff is intertwined underneath the soil level between beneficial microbes with fungus, with everything that helps the root system. So the best thing you could do is use organics that has that stuff included and make sure your soil is very healthy. And I would always mulch a new specimen. We never want to plant a tree and bury it with 4 inches of mulch on the trunk. That's a no-no. But we want to mulch. We can just gradually go to the edge, and we can always go a little thicker out here. So again, a little less water, give it a little chance to get going here that first summer, and we have a happy plant down the road. So there's a couple pictures instead of me hauling everything in here except for trees. So that's our planting compost from E.B. Stone. You can buy bags or bales. That's always on a buy 4 get 1 free special here. We like to show people success, so taking home some compost is always a good thing. And then there's the Sure Start. I don't mind if you grab that. I tend to use the same brand, E.B. Stone. There's a tree shrub fertilizer in there and like a little orange pouch. You'll see the picture of the lace leaf maple on the front of it. You know, we could use that at transplanting time. It's not going to hurt anything at all, and that would also be my fertilizer to use as we go forward. So if we talk a little pruning, you know, we're just kind of coming out of winter, and a lot of times we touch on a lot of these. I teach like 3 pruning classes a year, you know, between November, January, and then another one early summer. We'll certainly touch on maples again at the summer class because it's not a bad time to prune either. But maybe if you think of it this way, if you've got, let's do lace leaf maple first. If you've got a lace leaf maple in your yard, and those are little umbrellas, every yard should have one, they're nice and pretty. But a lot of times if you look at that tree, you think twiggy mess, right? There's 2 I drive by on the way to work every day, and one of these days I'm just gonna get out of my truck and prune them for free of charge. They're driving me crazy. But if you, a lot of times with customers I find, a lot of people ask me to come look at theirs, can you fix it? I think you'd be surprised if you reached underneath it in the winter. We don't want to do that because it's really hard to see lace leaves during the growing season. Everyone can agree, I got branches everywhere. How am I ever going to figure out where to prune that thing properly? So winter time, we get up underneath those things, we take out all the dead wood. It doesn't mean disease, there's nothing wrong with it, but a lot of times you look at a maple, it'll be gray, beige. You don't even prune her sometimes. You can have your gloves on or just lightly snap. You get all that dead wood out of there, then you stand back, you're like, wow, my problem's fixed because you got rid of all the clutter out of the center. So you'll open up the tree, you'll get better air, you'll have fresh growth. That's stage one, and I would always kind of do that in the winter if you can. If you haven't done it yet, you're probably pretty close to leafing out, so try to get it done here pretty quickly. I can always go back and pull branches up that are hanging on the lawn or another plant. You know, we can always follow those stems up, you know, and cut to where I have side branches, and then it just grows down the same way it always does. You know, I've had one I rescued in my yard 20 years now. I'm not going to keep digging up 6 inches of my grass every season so it can keep growing 6 inches. I'm going to lightly prune it and let it grow back to that same point again, and it does not look butchered. You can't tell that I have to do that every year, but keeping up on it consistently instead of going back 5 years later and saying, whoa, you're out of control, I got to cut you back, is going to be a little tougher to do. The upright trees, same thing in the winter. If I can see the structure, I'm going to have an easy time pruning it. So when we don't have leaves in the winter, it's excellent time to look in there and go, okay, I got a crossing branch, I got a couple pieces of dead wood, I want to get this branch out of there, it's growing crooked, whatever. I can correct that pretty quickly during the winter months. Now that we're leafing out and we head into summer, you know, it's always a good time. Well, again, we'll talk about this in the June pruning class, is a little bit of thinning. You always tell people it's easy to tell in our climate because we're so wet in the spring. If your tree leaves out and you look out at your coral bark maple here in a few weeks and you're like, what is going on? The branches are so wet and heavy, they're hanging down to the ground, it's going to break. We need to thin that tree out. So we need to get some of that branches out of there, and that can be done any time of the season. At great times in early summer, I can pull some little branches out here and there, open up the shape a little bit, maybe take some tips back so they can regrow, but that's easy to do all year long, not just in the summertime as well, okay? So fertilizing, like I mentioned, that's the bag I have in my garage, what we tend to use on maples, conifers. It's a great all-purpose fertilizer, but we don't need a lot of phosphorus, potassium, obviously with the maple. We just want a little nitrogen and a nice well balance for the root system. So something like that's going to be more like 733, a good amount of organic nitrogen that will never burn. If I want to feed my tree, the most I would ever do for me is twice a year, and I hardly ever do it twice a year if I'm honest. It's usually once a season if the tree is happy. If it's unhappy, maybe I'll get it twice and try to get a little quicker growth. Or maybe I bought a young one today and I'm trying to kind of hide the neighbor's garbage can or something. Maybe I'll put a little extra. Okay, you can get a little bigger a little quicker. That's certainly an option too. But ideally it's that February, March time frame. That's going to give me a push of foliage. So if I want a thicker, more leaves going, that's going to be the way to go. If I do it again in early summer, that tends to build caliper. So maybe like we mentioned, I have a tree that the branches are hanging down, way too wet. It's not strong enough. I forgot to tell you it's a $5 cell phone fine. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I forgot to turn it off.
Oh, I do that all the time with mine, and I'm usually having the front here.
So
if we thin it a little bit, or feed it a second time there in June, that's going to thicken up my wood. So maybe I do a little thinning. That second dose might get me back to like, okay, I've got a little nicer balanced structure. I don't have as much foliage, okay? Now, the two bad news things we talk about today are these two. Anyone know the term verticillium wilt? Has everyone heard that? Anybody heard that? Be honest. We don't have to be science people today. So this is the problem with not just maple, but a lot of plants in the state of Washington. This is a fungus that's in my soil. Every single person in here, I could guarantee you I could find verticillium fungi somewhere in your soil structure. It's everywhere around the world. The problem is in Washington, it's a waterborne fungus. So if water table comes up and gets into my root systems, now that verticillium has the tendency to attack certain plants. There's no cure, there's no spray, there's nothing we can do except not plant the same thing in that same spot again. Me as a dumb gardener, I'll use myself as an example. I think I wasted like $700 on 3 coral barks 3 straight years from my front kitchen window when I bought my house. Oh, I can dig deeper, I'll get that out of there. And I knew what it was. Nope, no, next one dead, next one dead. I finally was like, all right, I'm not gonna win this battle. I'll pick something different, because there's a lot of great trees that don't get verticillium. I chose a dogwood, you know, it's a great tree, but I still wanted to look out the window and see my coral bark maple, so I got one somewhere else. So everybody has it, is the point. There's nothing you can do about it as far as your cure. We can't spray, we can't fix it. You have to be wary of, again, where that groundwater is. Hard pan clay, poor drainage is always going to lead to that. Typically this time of year, if you've got an old tree and you're looking at it leaf out and it looks like, oh sweet, it's leafing out, nothing's wrong, and then you look back out a week later and one whole branch of it looks like you lit a match to it and the leaves were coming out and they just all shriveled, and I have a third of it dead or half of it dead or one branch of it dead, that's usually the sign that you've got verticillium starting in there, and we got to do something pretty quick. If it hasn't made it to the trunk, maybe we can save the tree and transplant it, but if it is in the trunk, it needs to be taken out, and again, I would really caution you about planting another one in that same area. You can see on that wood, it's really hard to explain to people, but if I cut any branch that has verticillium, big one, probably 1.5 inches or larger, as far as width, I'm gonna see that dark bullseye always there somewhere in the wood. I can show you, you can probably look online and find a bunch of pictures like I did, but you can see pictures of that cross section that, okay, now I'm gonna A, sterilize my pruners or my saw so I don't put that into the next tree I prune, and B, I'm probably gonna get it out of there, send it to the compost heap in the sky, and go choose something different to grow in that spot, okay? The second one is always black. This is called Pseudomonas. I love coral barks. I have one. A lot of people do. Coral bark is the most susceptible to this. This is something we can correct. So I would always recommend, especially on coral bark, walking out in your yard in the spring and looking up at the tree. Do I have black tips? Do I have black anywhere? Because if I can prune it out of there, it'll regrow and I'm probably okay. If I walk away from it and that black starts at the tip and goes right down the branch and gets to my trunk, now I have black on the trunk, the tree's gonna be a goner. That's not a soil-borne thing. We can put another tree back in there, but nobody wants to waste their money and have to start over again. So watch for the black. You always would get copper. You know, my growers will spray a good natural copper fungicide on coral barks for sure, but many of the maples at least once, just to make sure they're clean and ready to go when they come in, okay? Beige wood, gray wood, don't care. That's all natural dieback. Old growth and shade, it's gonna shed out, but I don't wanna see black. That's the one color that's gonna let us know we might have some Pseudomonas. Now, maples in pots. You know, if we're a plant addict like me, we run out of space in our yard, so we just go buy more pots. My wife would tell you, yeah, he's got way too many pots sitting around, so I do. But I like maple, so I tend to follow. I can just sneak that one home and I'll get another maple in the pot going. So we can always buy, it's a great choice of a tree for container, especially if we choose the right one. You know, a lot of times it's, well, how long can I keep that in the pot? You know, we play 20 questions. You know, well, how big's the pot? Where are you going to put it? What variety is it? There's a lot of factors, but there's a lot of really good dwarf or slow growing ones you can have in a pot for a long time. I mean, very easy to grow, and even big ones for a number of years if we have a good sized container. You know, as long as you look at the growth rates, you know, maybe ask me or the staff here today, you know, we can help you find a really cool maple that can grow in a pot for a lot of years. You know, my rule is usually 10. I want to have 8, 9, 10 years out of a tree in a pot before I got to go out and mess with it, move it into the yard, send it to the Arboretum as a donation, then go buy another one. But I've got to kind of watch about 10 years usually for me is what I like to see. Always get a frost-proof pot. You know, some people do plastic, terracotta will break here in the winter, but plastic will last you for a while too. But a good frost-proof glaze, it, to me, is always the way to go. Whether it's brown clay, rustic, whatever your taste is, there's some awful cool containers. The other thing I would tell you is don't do what I did years and years ago. I love those vase-shaped pots, right? Get a cool shape and then whoop, they get narrow at the top, right? So good luck getting your tree back out of there in 10 years because I've done that a few times. So I don't buy tool shaped vase pots anymore. I look for something that's got a nice even rim that I can go, okay, I can cut the edge and pop you right out and do something else with it down the road, okay? Always use a great organic potting soil. This is a tough one for me because I don't want to rip on any soil brands. You may have your favorite. The one that I'll say don't ever use is Miracle Grow anything when you're planting trees and stuff, and especially anything that says moisture control. You'll think, oh sweet, I won't have to water it. What's the problem? We've been talking about drainage. You're going to hold too much moisture. You're probably going to get root rot in your pot if you use something that holds that much moisture. So we want a really good, well-drained soil. I use our Edna's organic potting soil for everything at my place, and then add a few hands of compost in there. Mix that all up, I'm good to go. Compost has a little top dress because I'm kind of OCD and I like the nice mulch on the top. So that's my formula. It always works, and again, I water goes right through. It holds the moisture it needs, but I don't have any extra. One big thing I see talking to customers is wherever the pot is, always keep it off the hard surface. I don't care if it's deck, concrete, porch, wood, whatever it is. You slap one on a concrete surface, you're going to tend to get some friction, and you're probably not getting the drainage that you want. This happened to me many moons ago. I was using my bad examples. Came home, was like, what's that smell? And I had a lion's head on my porch for about 10 years in a huge black glazed pot, and it had rooted through the hole, so went sideways off the concrete right into the soil next door and clogged the drainage. So I pulled it out, literally like 5 gallons of compost smell water came flushing out. I'm lucky the tree lived because I noticed it. So get the feet, get a riser. If we just have that up, you won't even tell they're underneath there. And there's some fun, kind of fun decorative pot risers too, or pot feet. But we could, even the little recycled rubber squares I put on everything, you'll never even see they're there, but it just levitates that little bit off the ground so that we make sure, again, we've got the water going through. This time of year, if you're like me, I've done all mine the last couple weeks, but if you have too many maples and pots, walk around. If I've got a container, take your finger and go right inside the edge of the pot and just feel, can I put my finger in the soil? Am I hitting like, whoa, I can't even get in there. That's a solid root around. That may tell you, okay, it might be time to either slip that out, do a little root pruning, replant it with some fresh soil, or get it into a larger container for a few years down the road. We don't want too root bound. What's going to happen is you don't have any soil left. You know, maybe think back to last summer. You know, you were out there watering it like you usually do, but man, it's still dried out and got a little tired in August. It's probably going right through the soil because there's too much root system and not enough soil left to hold a little bit of moisture for the next day kind of thing, okay? So check your edges. That'll kind of tell you if we need to repot pretty quickly. So that's the potting soil I'm talking about. We've got the pot risers there, which I think are pretty cool. You know, recycled tires, getting more trash out of the landfills. And that's a local company right in Snohomish, which is even cooler. We just go pick them up out of his garage. But it's a place called Pot Risers. And you can get big ones, small ones. They hold an incredible amount of weight. I mean, I've got probably 2 500-pound containers on my patio, and I have those little rubber squares underneath them, and they're perfect. So they hold a lot of weight. So let's go look. Do we have any questions so far about kind of growing and pruning and all the things we've breezed through? And I'll kind of start showing you some trees. What you got?
When you mentioned scoring,
yeah,
and I watched one of your videos too, and you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I mean, are you actually cutting the roots?
Not cutting in. Let's see if I find.
Kind of roughing it up a little bit.
Exactly, roughing it up. Sorry about this, buddy, but I'll use you as a demo. I don't have my pruners in here. See, I feel bad as a nurseryman. So if I had my tip, this is what I'm planting. I'm literally, I'll use my finger. It works actually pretty well today.
So it's a gentle.
I'm just doing, exactly. I'm not digging in. I'm not trying to rip it apart. You know, sometimes if you buy, you know, I hear this a lot in the nursery business, not just with maples, but everything. You know, oh, it's root bound, it won't grow. That is not the case at all. I'd rather have a healthier root system myself. So sometimes if I see a wad of roots at the base, I might just chop that whole bottom ½ inch off, but I'm always just gonna lightly score or scrape the outside of that. Yeah, I'll get my pruners and show you after class if you want. I got lots of things that we can score out there. All right, got any more? We're looking at some trees, yes?
Can you root prune Japanese maples when they're dormant and put them back?
Oh, absolutely. I do that. I've done that to quite a few of mine over the years. It's not so good during the growing season, of course, but that's why I'm saying it. you know, almost, maybe we didn't get to it this winter, it's not super root bound. Okay, you'll be okay. Last the summer, then this fall, winter, when they go dormant again, maybe pop that out, do a little bit of root pruning, pop that back in with some fresh soil, and then you got a happy plant for a couple more years.
How much can you prune off?
Well, we're not going to ever cut it in half by any means, but I mean, I could shave, you know, probably a good inch off the perimeter at least. And again, if the bottom's got that mat on there, I can take that off as well. Yeah, very easy. Okay, so let's look at some trees. You know, this is a tough one because I've done this show for some garden clubs and probably had 200 pictures on here, so I cut it down to maybe show you a little flavor. Just because I didn't mention doesn't mean it's not a good one. I kind of put some stuff maybe on here like I brought in to kind of show you the variety, because I think there's, again, a maple for everybody, no matter what your color taste is or growth habit. So you might see one on here you want to jot down. Some of these I may not quite have yet. We got another load coming this week. I'll mention that on a few of them. But we do have quite a bit around already. So this is kind of the opening slide, and I'll just tell you because someone will probably ask me. That's the one on the right. There's one called, let's see, your left. It's called Autumn Moon. So that's got the orange on it. That's a full moon maple. We'll have those next week finally. If you want that one's a good one, kind of for that part shade. On the right there is a variegated lace leaf called Suisse. I'm hoping we'll have some more like early summer. That's a hard one for me to get, but I think that's a really striking variety if you like kind of the lighter green, dark green mix. Yes?
Is the autumn moon a coral bark?
That's a full moon maple, so you'll see here in the show. I'll show you. It's a little different species. So if we just kind of talk a couple lace leaves here first. Now, I think everybody knows lace leaf maples. You know, we carry probably, I think, more than anybody around here. I might have 15, 20 different lace leaves back there. Certain times of the year, I would have a tough time telling them apart, to be honest with you. I think your decision is this. Do I want something red to purple? Hot sun's great for those. Part shade, I'll get a little more green with the red, which is fine. Do I want the opposite? I don't like red. I want something bright green. We can do that. Well, we have others, to me, that kind of have all the colors in between, which I think are some of the fun ones. Everybody's got a red lace leaf maple, I think. Most yards should have one. But if you wanted to mix it up and get something cool, I'd look at some of the other lace leaves that are out there. These are two of my favorites. That's an old one called Baldsmith. That might change color 3 times during the year. That's kind of more towards the fall. We've got lime green with pinky red in the spring. We've got a different color in summer. Kind of a fun one if you like different leaf color. My favorite one is right there, Otto's Dissectum. This is one I brought in. They're just, I wish they were leafed out. You can see the color. I like me some orange myself, so that one always gives me orange fall color for one. But even in spring, I've got that orangey, red, green, kind of everything mixed together. The summertime, a little bit more green, but I still have that orangey, red kind of tip growth. So again, depending on what your taste is, you're going to be able to find one that catches your eye. The most common question, well, let's do the last two. So Baldsmith Autos, if I'm going for the darkest purple red that takes the most heat, it's always going to be a Red Dragon. That's one we carry probably the most of as far as lace leaves for popularity. And maybe a couple like Spring Delight is more green. If you can tell in that picture, that's one in spring. Looks like I took red fingernail polish and just tipped every little finger of that foliage. Is really cool for spring. And then again, I'm green in summer, turning back to the orange red in the fall. Yes?
How big do they get?
So that's the second point of this, is everybody's going to say, how big does that get? How big does this get? How big does that get? To be honest, there's a couple that are a little different. I mean, I can show you some of those after class. But all lace leaf maples grows the same. You see, that's how they're pruned that is going to make the difference, or how they're grown. We can get low ones. Everybody wants like a foot tall one, and I always kind of chuckle, you know, there you go. So what's it going to do? It's going to grow into the ground, you know, and you're going to have to just keep pruning it up, and you have to build some sort of structure to get the tree up. So every one of these at a nursery like ours is going to say 3 to 6 feet. You pick, you know, let it get up to the height you want. If I'm a lace leaf, I'm going to grow up and then back over, and then up and then over, and I'm just going to keep growing on top of myself, if that makes sense. So whenever you're like, that's it, sweet, you keep the top of it pruned so that we have a nice buckle when we go sideways, and that's your height. I mean, you can kind of pick what you want to do to it. If you let it go every single one of these will get 6 feet or a little bit more, and you'll have a big, large weeping shrub, which is beautiful if you've got the room. But most homeowners I talk to want 3 feet. You know, they want it 3 feet tall and something nice and tidy. And that's totally doable. Not maybe 3 feet by 3 feet, but 3 feet by 5 or 6 feet wide. Give them a little bit of room to spread, because that's what gives us the character. Okay? Yes?
Do you have the spring delight now, or is that?
I've got a couple back there. I know I've got a couple of them back there, and I think we still have a couple more coming too. Yeah. Everything's late this year, I'm sorry. So Lace Leaves is phase 1, and we'll breeze through some of these kind of small shrubby type trees. So some of these will look more like a shrub, some will look like you've already bonsaied them, some will look like a little character, depending on the variety. A lot of these would be great choices to grow in pots. You know, if you wanted something manageable in size that'll give you the color, the character, the interest of a maple, a lot of these might be suitable choices for sown or shade containers. So if we kind of do a few here, Makawa, this is a little baby one, I've got bigger ones out there. You know, that to me is the quintessential Japanese maple. If you're looking for something for structure, for color, for small stature, for character with horizontal branching, I don't think you're ever going to beat Makawa Yatsubusa. That's an old school one with great lime green color, red seeds, really nice fall color, and very manageable size. You might see a really old Makawa on an arboretum or a collector, maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, and that's it. It's very easy to me to keep more like eye level with that really nice character. Not weeping, it's going to be more of that horizontal branching pattern. Shana would be like that if I want red. I'll tell you with Shana, if you've got dry, maybe a little drier, you don't water as much maybe as we should, that one's probably, I would never call maple drought tolerant, but that one can fend with a little less water for sure. It does not like to be watered really regularly. And again, a small stature, maybe something 4 or 5 feet and bushy as it grows for a container or a small sunny spot in the yard. If we look at some strap leaf ones, you know, these will kind of give you a little bit more like bamboo. Look at the cool texture on those. So we have one like Koto no Ito. They call that the harpstring maple. So I would have really thin, delicate foliage on a beautiful little small tree. That one might get 10 or 12 feet tall is about it on Koto no Ito. We could do that part shade. If you water a little bit, it can do some sun as well in our area. But that would be gold in the fall. Villa Toronto I'll have here pretty quick. That would be very similar with a little bit of red into it. And Villa's a great one if I want, you know, kind of that vase shape that spreads a little bit. Not hangs down again, but I'm going to end up having that low, wide shape to it versus such a little stiff shrub, if that makes sense. One of the reasons I put that in is because another question I get with a lot of customers on one like Villa Toronto or many others, if you look at that picture, you can see what? 2 different leaves on that same tree, right? You can see that on there. Big, fat, wide ones on the tips and older ones that are much narrower. That's a lot of these linear lobum or thread leaf or strap leaf maples. The juvenile foliage will always be a little bit bigger than the adult foliage from the year before. So they always kind of, again, to me, it just adds interest. You're going to kind of have that progression year to year with 2 kind of cool different leaves mixed together. If we look at some kind of unique ones to me, here's a couple again that might get into that maybe 8-10 foot range and a little bit sideways. Sakushigata is one of my favorite with the lime green stripes on it, and we call that in the nursery chocolate red. It's kind of a really cool, deep, almost like a bricky chocolate red color. It's a little darker than most, and I think a very unique in landscape. Sumagaki is one they literally call little girl with red painted fingernail. If we were to look up some Japanese and try to learn a little bit, that's one where we would be lime green in the spring with that really nice brushed edge of scarlet. And that's another one, a little bit of shade, part shade is ideal for that Sumagaki. If we look at kind of a couple other options, Shadiva Gold, we got a bunch of these this year. I think that one's a useful tree up here, especially again as an understory specimen or a part shade again, morning sun. That's going to be like lime green, almost yellow all through the season, and then super bright butter yellow for fall color, and pea green bark, which is really pretty in the winter. In tradition in Japan, we would have coral bark mixed with something with green bark, and mix the two together would be kind of the traditional forest. So Shadiva Gold will give you that smaller stature on something yellow. One of my favorites I have is Benihashi. In America, we call that Ruby Stars. The Americans renamed that. That's a great small red one. I brought one up here. That's the last one on the side here, just leafing out, the little taller one there. That's a nice sized tree, again, for a container or a small yard. I'm never gonna get super big on Ruby Stars. That one I would say more again in that 6 to 8 foot tall range with a tree shape, not a thick shrub shape. Kind of some fun ones. So gossamer, I've been looking for a while. We did get some plants in this year. I probably have 7 or 8 of them out there. But that's a japonica maple. If you can see in that picture, very narrow, thin foliage. It's spectacular in the fall. The japonica maples are probably the top plants of any kind, if you ask me, for fall color. So I would see purples, oranges, reds, yellow, every color in the rainbow mixed with that in the fall. But japonica maple is usually a pretty big creature, and this one is tiny. This would be for, again, a container or a small spot in the yard that I don't want something super large. That's my mini maple from my house in a pot. That's this little beauty right here. So this is the only maple that I've seen in about 20 years that's grown from seed. These are not grafted like every other kind of maple is. This is a small creature. This is a seedling found by Isley. I think they worked on it for about 10 years before we started introducing it out to the public. But this is one I haven't even grown to the ground. I've got 2 now in pots. I probably don't need 2, but I got 2. You know, to give you a reference, the original one wasn't even introduced yet, and they gave me one to try as a seedling because I know I'm a maple freak. So I have it in a pot that's literally that wide and that deep. It's been in there for 12 years. I have never had to transplant it. It's still healthy as can be. My plant is literally that tall and that wide in 12 years. So that, if I want small, I want a bonsai, I want something really cool that I can last for a long time in a smaller container, mini maple's the way to go. Okay.
Can I ask you a question on that real
Yeah.
quick? Because it's seed growing, are you seeing a little bit of a variation between the colors?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So she asked about variation, and that is totally true. You guys went out and grabbed a couple before class. I grabbed another one when they came in because I was like, ooh, I got to have that one. So I brought the whole staff back about a week ago when we got our last batch of them. Said, all right, come over here and watch this box as I open it. Opened the box, and everyone was like, how is that possible? And in one box was everything from brighter green to orangey green to red green to purple green to scarlet to a pinky green. I mean, every kind of variation in there, and that way you could kind of choose what color you like a little bit, okay? A couple other ones, Sharp's Pygmy. We've got a few of those, and that would be a little thicker, rounder, kind of twiggy green one. Another one that would be great for a pot for a lot of times. Or certainly in the yard, is not super tall, but maybe give you a little bit of width if that's what you were looking for. I put Corvallis Broom in there. I can't get a better picture because it's brand new, but if we talk coral barks, you know, there's a lot of coral barks out there these days. Everyone's breeding for smaller coral bark maple. This is one of the better ones I've seen come out of Corvallis. You can probably guess Oregon State down there. It's got really good color and a smaller tree for sure. We get Little Sangu next week. There's some really good new ones. If you don't want a coral bark maple that's 25 feet tall, but like 6 or 8 feet or 12 feet, more manageable in size, we've got some options. Corvallis would be another great kind of semi-dwarf option for you. If you like orange, there's one on the side over that side. That's a Kane, and that would be as good as orange as I see in spring. There's a few out there like Katsura. I've got a Katsura Hime in my own garden. That's a little dwarf form, but I love orange. That's a great spring color. That'll be green during the summer with the little orangey new growth on it, and then we go orange red for fall again. But a Kane would be, again, a shrub, you know, kind of a thicker, shrubbier, maybe 6x6 plant instead of getting, again, much taller. A totally unique one is I've seen it called both names, Ryu Sen or Ryu Sai. And I wasn't really fond of this when I saw it come out. Maybe it's been 10, 12 years now. I said, I don't know, man, that just doesn't do much for me. But if you see them growing the right way, like this is spectacular. This is a friend of mine. We did this years ago and trained it over an arch to look like a vine. So Ryusen, there's one right here you can see. It's not a lace leaf maple, it's a regular sized Japanese maple, but you can take the tip and do whatever you want to it. So it's gonna go up and hang straight down very narrowly. So it's really cool to kind of train, you know, over a gate, you know, make it a specimen piece, kind of something fun. It's gonna stay kind of whatever, anything weeping's kind of whatever you want to do with it. You could stake it up and go tall and narrow and let it hang down. But I think most customers that have tried these have been pretty pleased with kind of how fun they are, and that you can kind of make a fun shape out of them, kind of whatever you want to do.
Is that just one tree?
That is 2 that meet in the middle. Yeah, so we did 2 that meet in the middle. And again, if you had patience, one will go all the way over if you want to do it that way too. Yeah. Rhode Island Red is right here in the front for the old Rhode Island chicken. So we got that one in front. So that's another sport off of a bigger tree that just won't get quite as big. You can see that's a picture down at Isley. They got a great view of Mount Hood down there. But you can see the one in their garden. It just makes a really nice, thick little teardrop shape. Not open, not airy. It's a little different structure. But that's another one that'll take sun, and you could grow in a pot for an awful long time. Those grow pretty slow and wouldn't overpower most landscapes. The Murasaki, that's a spring color picture. That would be another shrubby one. We'll have those in another week or 2. They aren't here yet. But that one I would be, again, twiggy, thick, and a little bit lower. I had one of those at my last house. You know, you're talking probably 3 foot tall and 6 foot wide. Again, not weeping in structure, a little stiffer shape to it. Now, I put these in this morning because I wanted to make sure they're coming next week. But these are probably the most 2 asked about maples on the internet and from our customers that collect stuff. If you're into really cool variegated, hard to find maples, those are probably 2 at the top of the list. We got a whole bunch of them coming in. It should be here like next Wednesday or Thursday, so you can still take advantage of the sale if you come down late next week to grab the discount. But Geisha Gone Wild is exactly that. It's Geisha Gone Wild. I can put that in sun or shade. I'm going to see pink, I'm going to see red, white, green, all colors in between depending on the amount of sun you get. And that's a small tree. I got a pretty old one down the Arboretum in Everett for the Master Gardeners. I think it was old when I got it for them, and it might be like 8 feet tall. I mean, that's it. It's not going to be a gigantic plant. That's another great one to me for a container if you're looking for a small specimen. If you're into pink, and white is mainly the 2 colors. Taylor is the top of the list for the pink lovers. That's got to be in shade. I want to make sure that's clear. If I put that in afternoon sun, that's burnt by June. So morning sun, you probably could get away with, or shade. That would be a great one to brighten up a shade area with that bright foliage color. And we'll have a bunch of those next week too. If we look at some tall ones here real quick. So to me, there's always, not that I love my state, I've been here my whole life. There's too much green in Washington. Can we all agree on that?
Yes.
So if there's one thing I try to tell people of landscape design, I don't care what class it is, we could be talking about shrubs tomorrow, whatever, get some foliage color in your yard. And if you've got good drainage, you've got sun, one of the easiest things to do when you got cedars and firs and everything green around, get a big red leaf Japanese maple. I mean, again, I think one that every yard should have. I don't care if it's Fireglow, Bloodgood, Emperor One, you pick your kind and your size, but it's really going to pop in the landscape. I think if you drive around and see yards that have that red, purple, burgundy mixed in, you're going to get some great interest during the growing season. So the options for that are pretty easy. If I want to stay small, the #1 selling maple here is Fireglow. You know, that's the small stature, typical city yard, maybe 12 or 15 feet as we get old, and that's it. Big thick trunks, nice little tidy shape to it. I think the most manageable of those upright red ones. I didn't put 3 slides on here. If we go in between, it would be Emperor One. So now I'm in that 15, 18-ish foot size with very similar color. And I want to go big, we go Bloodgood. That's probably the #1 planted maple in the entire United States, especially in the Southeast, that want big 20, 25 foot specimen Japanese maple with that foliage color. So those are kind of the 3 stock ones. You'll see some other ones out there too that are fun, but consider that as probably the specimen in the front yard or a landscape that would add that foliage color. We talked about coral bark a little bit, and I just want to make sure this is clear. So Sangu kaku is the original. That's what we would call coral bark maple around here all over the place. That's a 25-foot tree, and I would say probably a little bigger than that if we get old. That's probably the largest maple that we carry for growth. So if you have the room, that's a spectacular tree in the landscape, absolutely, for sure. Most people I talk to are like, no, I don't have quite that. Can we go down a little bit? Now we get into the ones I started mentioning already. Little Sangu, Corvallis broom, Akakawa hime. There's a bunch of really good dwarfish or semi-dwarf coral barks out there now. Same bark color, same leaf, nothing changes, but I've just cut my size down, again, to whatever you would like to have in your yard, okay? If I want to go wide, I always bring up Sherwood Flame. That's another one of my personal favorites. You can see the difference with that is what? Low branching and big, wide, horizontal shape to it. More like gumdrop look, not this vase shape over my garden. Maybe that's the one I'm trying to block the neighbor's view, you know, or something with. If we want a little bushier, lower branch specimen, Sherwood Flame is a great red one too. Hogioku is still my computer password after all these years. Don't break into my laptop. Because I like orange. So Hogioku still, it's a hard one to get for some reason these days. I'm trying to find more of them. We have a couple around. Hopefully we'll get more summer, fall. But that one to me is just, I want simple. I want classic lime green. I want a nice green in the summer. And I want orange in the fall. Sweet. Hook yourself up with a Hogioku. That one never disappoints. On the other side there is Osakazuki. Now, anyone been down to the Arboretum at Legion Park? I volunteer down there all the time, and I take all the maples down there. But if you go to the viewing mound, if you know that park a little, Arboretum at the viewing mound, those are two Osakazukis that are about as big as ones that I've ever seen anywhere. They were gifted from Osaka, Japan to the city of Everett about 60 years ago, and were pretty good size at that point. But you go down there in the fall, there's a lot of good red fall color. I'm not saying there's not other options, but I doubt you will ever beat Osakazuki for fire engine red in the fall. That would be, to me, top orange, top red right there for fall color. Summer gold, I think we sold the last one the other day. I have a few more coming in this week, and then summertime we'll have another influx of inventory. I'm not using COVID as an example because my growers do all the time and I'm tired of the same excuse. But if you think about plants, you know, I can produce an annual and a perennial in about 3 months, send it off, and you never miss a beat, right? If we talk about conifers, maples, slower growing things, there's a huge gap right now in inventory because nobody worked in 2020, 2021, started getting back to somewhat normal, and now we're catching back up. So my problem this year is not to, you know, blame COVID, but everything is late. You know, they just don't have anything up to size until it flushes and roots, and now in summer or fall we'll have some more. So there you go. I said my piece. So summer gold, the difference with that was one, believe it or not, bred by the Girardelli family in Italy, which kind of always makes me smile. It seemed chocolate brothers. So what they wanted was Japanese maple that took heat and humidity in the Mediterranean. So there you go. So that's one that will take some heat. I think the foliage color is outstanding. It's going to give you the gold, orange, and spring. If I've got a decent amount of sun on that, it will stay gold the entire summer until fall. If I go shade, it still is just a really bright lime green. I've seen a few customers that I know that have purchased these the last number of years, and they are really bright foliage tree. That's a great big tree. That's not a small thing at all. Punkeel is a newer one. You can see again more strap leaf that'll get a little bigger. We've got some Punkeel out there. If I want kind of that burgundy red color strap leaf that again has got a little bit more size to it for the yard. A couple of more orangey ones. So Katsura, we have one of these down at the Arboretum I mentioned, about 25 feet. That's the one of the original trees down there, and that's a big orange foliage, green in the summer, orange red in the fall. Orange dream would be a step down, and I might have one or two of those still, but we'll have some more coming in. That would give me that bright orange in spring, like a Kane over there, but on a smaller tree. So I'd go a Kane for bush, maybe the orange dream for like 10-12 feet, and then Katsura for my full-size tree. Now, a couple in the fall, Tobiosho was found down at Isley years ago. That is a spectacular fall color tree. If I want a big old bushy 25 foot by 25 foot specimen maple that's green through the season and then turns bright colors in the fall, we always have Tobiosho around here. That's a great one, locally found right here in the Pacific Northwest. I put a close-up of Urukawa. This is the tree right here leafing out with the green with the little red on the tips. But look at the bark, you know, that's really cool. So that's the bark of this tree. They call that pine bark maple. So again, in the winter, I turn really bright red. That's another one like Osakazuki in the fall, but that turns brilliant red. And then what do I have to look at in the wintertime? I've got knobby pine bark on my tree, which I think is really strange and really cool. So that's one we always see. We got some of those around. Just as an example, because a lot of people asked, a couple of people asked for a class, how can I have a tree like that the entire year? You see, this one, Shindus Hojo, is another one of my favorites. The best one I've ever seen is at the Arboretum. You should go see it here in the spring. But Shindus Hojo, to me, is the poster child for this class, because I have maple, the tree for all seasons. I have that in spring. If we fast forward to June, July, I'll have green with lightly variegated leaves and those bright fuchsia red tips on it. Then we fast forward to fall and I go to an entirely different scarlet color. So I mean, it really looks like 3 different trees in 3 different seasons. So you can see springtime, that's right before we turn for fall right there. It doesn't even look like the same tree. Same size, same garden, same year, all the above than Isley, but definitely totally different color. It's the same thing on a large one like lion's head maple. Anybody got a Shishigashira? So that's a really cool, unique type of maple as well. We got some big, huge ones this year. We'll kind of show you the character of them. But that grows very clumpy, different habit, nice bark color on it. That's a big tree down the road. Doesn't grow very fast, but as we inch up there, you know, I've seen lion's head maples again in that 20-25 foot tall range as we get old. But again, there's my spring, there's my fall. 2 totally different color schemes as we go through the season. A couple others. Twombly's Red Sentinel is a very unique one. Does anyone have a Twombly's yet?
No, I want to get one today.
There you go. I got a bunch this year. We scored this year because that's one of my faves again. I have the original one in my garden in Everett the year those got introduced, and I got a pretty big one. The difference with that is this. It's just less width. And so I had a tight spot only 4 or 5 feet from my house, just off the gutter line, and I wanted red. You know, same discussion. I got so much green. Give me some red in the side yard here. So that's what I sought out and finally got one after looking for a few years. And it does fill a unique position in the yard where I don't have the spread room for Bloodgood or Emperor or a lot of these other ones we've talked about. That would give me the 15-20 foot of height I want, but I've cut my spread in half. So now I've got a much more columnar shape to it. So that's a great red one.
Can it handle full sun?
Absolutely, yeah. Mine gets cooked the entire day, and he's happy as can be. On the other side, there's one called Kamagata. We call that the eagle claw maple. It's got very unique foliage. I didn't bring one in. I know I've got some more coming this week, but that one I could say yard or container, because I've seen a lot of customers, good maple customers, have that in a pot for a long time. That doesn't grow very fast. It's not super large. Maybe in the yard, might get 8 or 10 feet, you know, as it gets really old. That's about to be a pretty old one. But in a container, we can keep it very slow and steady. It makes a really cool character tree, I think, for pots. And the leaves kind of roll out, look like a little eagle claws, what they call it that. It's kind of a fun little foliage. Now, we mentioned earlier, someone asked about full moon maples, you know, we were talking about one in particular. So everything we've talked about so far is Acer palmatum-itis, right? Our addiction to Japanese maples. They're all Acer palmatum. There's multiple species of Japanese maples, the Shirawasawanum. You got to say that really slowly. That's a tough one to say. So that's our true full moon maple. So the quintessential one is the golden full moon maple. If you've got a shade garden and you want to brighten it up, that is that color. Spring, summer, fall goes orange red. They are great for fall color, but that is one of the brightest foliages of any tree we ever carry around here. Just in the shade. We're not going to put that in afternoon sun for sure. That will get cooked in August. I hear it every year from a couple people. Yeah, I didn't listen to you. It looked great until August, and now it's all brown and tattered at the top because it got sunburned. So, excuse me, an understory tree or something in shade would be ideal. Morning sun's okay, but no afternoon sun. We've got other types of these full moons around too. We saw autumn moon at the beginning of the slideshow with more orange. That can take more sun because it's got more orange and red versus the yellow. There's another one out there called moonrise that I would have red, orange, and a little bit of yellow mixed in. That would take more sun as well. So you've got some options on those true full moon maples. On the right there is Acer japonicum. So I have a huge one in my yard I absolutely love, and this is a little different looking maple. Big foliage. If you get a big leaf japonicum, they almost look tropical a little bit, not like other maples do. Totally different than anything else we've talked about today. You can see the big huge leaves, much more texture to them, and probably for fall color, again, top of the totem pole. If I have dancing peacock, I have one called Ed Wood, we have Emmett's pumpkin, we got all kinds of fun japonicums out there. That's going to give me big foliage and really bright fall color. So my leaves honestly get about that big, almost the size of our native big leaf maples on Ed Wood. In the fall, I've got purple, yellow, orange, red, every shade in between. Japonicums are always going to have a big, huge multi-stem structure and get pretty tall, but also very wide. So that's what we need some room for. I have one over my garden. It's over the entire garden in the corner of my one of my spots out front. So they can take some sun, the green ones, it's not that. But if we get into the gold and some of the other colors, make sure we give it a little bit of shade, okay? Now just a few for morning sun. You can see the difference in these is what we call reticulated foliage. If you look really close at those, they're almost like paintings. I've got a leaf out and I've got striping, I've got multiple colors. There's some really fun ones out there that are leafing out if you're into really cool maples, but these are stuff we don't want in much afternoon sun. We want to keep them in morning sun to shade. A lot of them great for containers too. Again, don't grow very fast. So like Mikazuki, that's the crescent moon maple. That would give me some ambery tones with peach, and then greens and whites and all kinds of variegation in the summer months. The peaches and cream I have behind my house in total shade. That's got kind of a peachy, a reticulated look here in spring, a little subtler color, green with the veins in the summer, and then a nice orange in the fall as well. We have stuff like Radiant, you know, again, shade garden, container. I like a little pink, you know, pink's not my color. I shouldn't say I like a little pink. I like the oranges and peaches better, but some like a little pink on their tree. You know, that's a really stunning specimen to grow again in that morning sun shade area. It'll give you a little bit of pink variegation. There's a few like that. This is the floating cloud, they call it, ukigumo. This is one we haven't even had for a year and a half. I got like 20 trees coming next week, so leave your name. We've been waiting for like 2 years. So this is one where I want white and I want shade. I don't want really any sun on this. If a little bit of morning's okay, but no afternoon or it'll burn. But you want to stand back and look in the shade garden and see white. This will look like a floating cloud. So maybe a tiny hint of pink on occasion, but one you get a good ukigumo, you're gonna see more and more white on it as it matures, so you get that beautiful variegated leaf.
How tall does it get?
It's slow again, slow and steady, but maybe 15 feet as it gets really old. That'd be a long time. Yeah, that'd be a long time till it gets maybe 12 or 15 feet.
Yeah, I have one in a container that's been in a container for about 10 years, and it's maybe 7 feet.
Yeah, long time. Yeah, those grow really slow and steady. Couple others, butterfly. We do have a few of these around. Again, a lot of white, it's kind of a blue-green leaf and a little touch of pink on occasion. Maybe butterfly is a great one if you've got morning sun, even in a pot again. But I don't want this. I want something kind of not columnar, but just a little tidier. You know, you don't have room for a spread. Butterfly would be a great choice, maybe for a little narrower location for not a super huge tree. Shiraz is always fun. That's a present from our friends in the land down under. That one came out of Australia. So we'll call it an Australian Japanese maple, right? So in Australia, they call it Gwen's Rose Delight. The Americans renamed it Shiraz after the wine. Everyone likes wine, so we call it Shiraz. I'll have a few of these in. This is one you can almost do shade or sun. Very few of the variegated ones, I would say, put it in sun, it's going to burn. This one, if I put it in sun, I'll have more red, burgundy, dark pink, maybe a little green. If I go in shade, I lose the reds and the dark pinks, and I go more pastel pink, white, green, if that makes sense. So a little, two different kind of foliage colors. That's my purple ghost. At my house, we typically get a lot of the ghost series in. This year, not so much, but typically those are a lot of variegated maples again for shady or part shade container areas. You can look up online and see brother ghost, sister ghost, uncle ghost, grandma ghost, grandpa ghost, baby ghost. They got easy names to remember, but there's a whole ghost series. Purple ghost is the one we get purple on. I have a big, huge one in my backyard that we can have sun on. So I wanted the purple with that light, subtle, reddish kind of variegation on it as well. Eye candy always makes me smile, because the first time I found that, it was like trying to speak Japanese, like eye candy, how do I say that? And then you look at it and you're like, great. Some American called it eye candy, because that's really what he meant to say. So that always makes me laugh. So that's not a very good close-up. We do have a lot of eye candy this year, and that's a pretty cool variegated one, especially if you're looking for pots again or a small garden. We keep those over in our shade area here, and that would give me the white, the pink, the green on a pretty tidy little tree. That one doesn't get super big. One of my personal favorites is in Jumai Sinago. They call the sand sprinkled maple. This is another one to me that looks like three totally different tree specimens in 3 years. It turns orange in the fall, which I love personally. But if you look at that spring summer growth right there, really interesting color. You know, it's got the lime green that kind of shines through, and I think in Japan they call it sunagofu, is a type of sand art. So if you really looked at the leaf, it looks like you took a lime green paintbrush and like flecked little light green dots all over that kind of chocolate red color. Really, really unique maple to me. And Bihu. So this is another one for coral bark lovers that like yellow. So we have some of these out there that this is more of a yellow, bright yellow bark with a little corally tip on it for shade. This is one we don't want to do in afternoon sun, morning sun or shade on that one. And another great choice for pots if you want something smaller. The last couple here, and we'll get you out of here because we're probably at an hour here. I always talk too much about maples. Sorry. Is this Pacific Rim collection. So this is, again, my favorite grower, Isley, spending about 20 years playing with maple seedlings. So they've taken Acer palmatum, the first type of maple we talked about, traditional Japanese maple, and crossed it with Korean maple, which maybe increases hardiness a little bit. Not that we have to worry about that for temperature, but maybe takes a little bit more wet. And they're very unique growth habits. I think some of these are some of the coolest trees out there. This is the brand new one I brought. I only have one left. I'll get more. This is one called Origami, the bright green one in the front there. I got a sample last fall, and I don't know how, but I'm telling you, if you looked at the leaf when it's all the way out, it looks like a folded paper crane. I mean, I sat there and looked at it like, you gotta be kidding me. How did they figure that out? So it's definitely different for foliage and texture. Ice Dragon is like a lace leaf on steroids. We have a lot of people like these that wanted a 7-foot lace leaf weeping specimen with really cool wood color, spectacular color in the fall. But that would be not this lace leaf, but like, wow, look at the size of that thing growing out there in the garden. That was a pretty impressive one. I picked up a Cascadia, and I also planted one, the Arboretum, as a tribute tree a couple years ago down there in Everett. If you want to see that one, that's another, I think, very unique habit. It looks like it wants to be a lace leaf, but I'm telling you it's not. It doesn't hang, it just grows sideways and kind of has a little stiff, broad, shrubby look to it, but really delicate foliage. I thought that was extremely unique when that came out last year. Then you see the origami, and we have a couple, I'll get more, but I love Wabi Sabi. That's got a great name. So that's another one. You can see the close-up there. The seed, I got a sample of that last year before they introduced it in the fall. The seed looks like a flower. It is absolutely bright pink red. It's a green leafed one, but again, kind of that lace leaf on steroids. Really big character to it. I think my son saw me playing with the slides a few weeks ago. He called that the dinosaur. It looks like a big dinosaur, kind of a fun little shape to it. And the last two are spring. So first flame, that's spring, not fall. So these are just leafing out. We don't have a lot of these because this has probably been the most popular one last 2-3 years running for springtime. I have some gigantic big ones, and I might have 2 left that are small, and that's it until fall again. This is a hard one for Isley to produce enough of, but that is about as bright orange red as I've ever seen for spring growth. And then Final Fire is the other end of it. That one leaves out like salmony, kind of salmon pinky green, and then fades into green in the summer. And again, it looks like you plugged into a light socket when we get to the fall. That one's really bright when we get to fall color. Okay, so that's probably maple overload. We almost made it in an hour and 5 minutes.
Great information.
So you can we spend a lot of time here trying to help you guys on our website. Most all of this has a picture. If it says image not available, it means I'm not going to steal it from somebody that'll probably have their lawyer call me because I can hardly find pictures of a few. But almost everything on here is on our list on the website. We keep it by Japanese maples, specialty maples like the Japonicums and the full moons, and then lace leaf maples. You'll see a huge list on there, A to Z, but it'll give you kind of, at least an idea, like height times width, spring color, fall color, and then I put a little comment. We could call that Trevor's comment box. Like, why would I want that in my yard? Oh, this one's got incredible branching. This one's got a great bark color in the winter. We kind of put a little tip on there of kind of why it's maybe a little bit unique. So, because we get a lot of maples in here, but I hate to say it's not even the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of maples out in the world. You start looking on the internet, you'll get overwhelmed. Be careful. I'll say this, be careful with mail order. I've done a couple mail orders over the years, and I am like 0 for 6, I think. They just never tend to grow. So if you know the source, great. They might send you a healthy plant. They might not send you something, and I wish you luck getting your money back because I was 0 for 6 on that as well. So try, look around. Like I said, we got a great selection out there. With the maple class today, just simply tell her at the register you got 20% off all your Japanese maples starting today. That'll run through next Friday. So if you don't want to pull the trigger today, come down next week. You want us a little quieter, whatever you want to do. I think it's supposed to be 60 next Friday, so I hope that happens, but we'll see. I mentioned a few. This always makes me feel bad. Please don't put my staff on the spot. But if you come down, next Thursday or Friday or even next weekend, I'm here on weekends this time of year. Come find me. I have a lot of this cool stuff showing up like Thursday this week, so it's a little tight with the sale ending. But if you're down next Saturday, like you mentioned that geisha gone wild and I have to have one, where's my 20%? I'll go up there and tell her to give you the 20% on it. How's that? Okay. So we got any questions?
I have a question, and this is regarding a different kind of maple. It's
Eskimo Sunset? Okay.
Yes. I bought one last year, and it's still in the pot. I don't know where to put it.
Okay.
I don't know if it should be in full sun, in
Yeah.
part shade.
So-
I just want the best color.
So she asked about Eskimo Sunset, and that's kind of funny because I think I put that on my specialty maple list because that's a pretty unique tree.
Yeah.
If you don't know what she means, it's a variety, a species of maple that will grow as a shade tree. We would call sycamore maple. So much bigger leaves like you would see out in the woods. But this one is like all kinds of white, pink, green. This foliage is absolutely stunning. Now, the best place always is going to be morning sun, afternoon shade.
Okay.
I think you'll see it get acclimated if you get a little more sun, but you're probably looking at a little bit of sunburn in August, the first few summers.
Okay.
That is one I don't have in my yard. I've got a very good friend, a maple collector that has one, and we had it out in front of his place on the southwest side, torched like 3 straight years. We transplanted it behind the house, and it's up on the house. It looks great. Now he's on the east side. He's never had any burn on it at all.
And it holds that.
Holds that same deep color. Yeah, it's a really stunning foliage. Yeah.
All right,
So the one I bought from you that was about that tall, probably 20 years ago, is now about 25 feet
Yep, 25
tall.
feet, yeah.
It's huge.
And see, like, we have one, again, not to keep that, to mention the Arboretum, but if you look in the Legion Park Arboretum down there in Everett, if you walk the small tree walk, we've got a massive one right there, and it is out in full sun, and it was right before I started getting involved, or I would have talked them into planting it somewhere else. But it looks great in spring, great in early summer. August comes around and we get a little bit tired and crispy on the south side of it. We live with it that way. It sheds its leaves, and then we're back to normal again the next year.
The other thing I think is interesting about it is the underside is almost metallic.
Yeah,
Kind
very,
of
very,
coppery
very cool
purple, and
tree.
it shimmers.
Yeah, we have a few around here. They're not
Very
quite
pretty.
leafed out yet, but that's a fun tree to check
Yeah,
out.
it's a pretty one.
yeah.
What
You-
about a snake
She
bark?
had a question, dude.
Oh,
Just
I'm
one
sorry.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got your maple list. And
Yep.
Just general question about the maple list. So, things that are on the list, should we call if you haven't specifically talked about?
Well, or if you're interested to get it today, we can go look after class. I can probably tell you off the top of my head
Because
if I have them yet. If I have it coming, we can get your name down, give you a call when they do come.
Because I do bonsai, I'm interested in the Saiho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one, see, I have on the list. I think we'll get it eventually here in spring, but there was a little later in spring, early summer, but nothing for early
So
spring.
just leave my name.
Exactly, because
Okay.
now we're probably the only nursery I think I know, because customers comment on that we keep a really good wish list, and it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee from you that we're buying it just for you, but it's a great resource to leave your name for hard to come by stuff like that. That way you know the next time we get one plant, you're the person that gets first crack at it. Then we call you and let you know.
Oh, so
Yeah.
this list is on the
On the website, yes.
On the website. Yeah, it's great. This
Yeah.
is great.
Well, we try every year. I try to tweak it, and of course I have to do it over the holidays, and then inevitably in March and April I get a couple phone calls or emails like, hey man, sorry, I know you're going to be pissed, but I can't give you any of those this year. Great. So I take it off the list as best I can, but we'll get it again. So
Such is life.
there you go. There you go. You had a question?
I do. This tree here.
The origami?
Now,
Yeah.
how well would I don't remember what you said about sun or shade.
Oh, that one can go full sun or
Full sun,
part shade. I
all
wouldn't go
day?
deep dark shade, but you got full sun on that.
And
Yeah.
it stays green.
So that's green all through the season, and then orange red in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah. If
I
you
think
want
I
it,
would-
grab that, because I sold the other one to my friend the other day. We'll get some more of
I
those.
think I'm gonna
But
get
that's
it.
the last one. She's like, I'm gonna come up and grab that right
Well,
now.
because I have a blood good.
Yeah.
It's in front of the window.
Oh, that would be a sweet combination.
But
Yeah.
well, the thing of it is, it's not that big of a spot.
Uh-huh.
So I think I need to move the blood good
To a
because
bigger
I
area.
Because I don't like it real deep.
Yeah.
I like it more brighter
Bright
red.
red. Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think this would be
Good call.
perfect.
That's a sweet one. Yeah.
Okay.
So you had one.
Oh, what's a
Do I
snake
get a card?
bark maple?
So snake bark maple, again, a lot of species of snake bark maple are native to Japan as well as China. A lot of, and there's even a eastern United States Pennsylvanica maple that's got striped bark too. They're really hard to find, to be honest with you. I think I have a couple out there. I got some Phoenix, Acer conspicuum. That's on that specialty list again. We have some little seedlings out there. Maybe 5 was all I was able to get this year. Those just came in. But snake bark maple is really cool. The thing I always caution people is, we talked about drainage, verticillium wilt. That would be above and beyond acceptable to any other maple we've talked about. And that's what I worry about right here in Western Washington is down the road getting verticillium wilt, because I
So
think
if
that's
I
a
have one
tough.
containerized,
Container would be the
worry
way to
about
go. Yeah, container would be the way to go.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
We bought this a couple of years ago. Can you tell me what it is?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
That was from fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that looks like Tobiosho. I think that's Tobiosho. Yeah. So that's a green. That's green in the season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
You have
To-
another one out here?
we do. I just got some ones that size in, and we have a couple of big specimen ones too.
Yeah, we got
Yeah.
2.5 acres. and we
Yeah,
got
no,
more
that
than
looks,
enough
that, I
room,
think
so-
that for sure is Toby Ocho.
Okay.
That's a great fall color.
Beautiful.
Thank you everybody for coming.